It's the first model of the Cyborg Kuro-Chan collaboration, sporting the likeness of the iconic main character himself. It is CKZ00 Black Kid, coming to the game with a kit of Desperate, Giga Gatling, Hyper Missile, Biped Legs, and the leg ability of Trigger Happy, which buffs all leg stats minus armor and heavy limit for every crit scored with the shooting skill. Now, honestly, I have to say, even though the kit is rather fitting of the character based on my little research of the series through the afternoon leading up to recording, I have to say it is still a pretty dangerous kit all the same. Desperate, we've only seen a couple of times on other models such as Tyrell Beetle and Bala Shatario, and what it does is buff your base damage output by times 2 or times 3 at the cost that upon completing your turn, you also take half of the damage you dealt as recoil. And it is also worth mentioning with this skill that upon using it, it is also capable of pierce damage to yourself. So even though you do get a pretty substantial damage bonus from it, it is something I would recommend exercising caution using unless you are basically going to go in with an all-in or all-out kind of mindset. Giga Gatling, however, is a brand new skill being debuted to the game. Basically, how it portrays, according to descriptions, is it's simply Mega Gatling with the high damage bonus, but also includes passive defense ignore, which will put it on the same tier as, say, Ghost or Ghost Shot for an extra kick behind every shot when you do take advantage of it. With the right arm, of course, transforming into the iconic machine gun arm that the main character in the anime Kuro-Chan does use himself. Left arm of Hyper Missile is simply a gunpowder-based move. We've seen it before on other bots such as God Emperor or even Garuru Metal, which is simply a gunpowder-based move that does pierce damage instead of an AoE. So honestly, probably the more conventional gunpowder skill of the few that are listed, and definitely the one to go for and make use of if you're going to make use of a gunpowder skill at all. So, but across the board, honestly, this kit is pretty well balanced for what this model does offer. About 3750 HP armor for the head, about 3000 per arm, about 3400 for the legs. Pretty solid stats across the board. Definitely don't have to worry about missing attacks too hard with success stats of over 1100 for both arms. Base damage also is really, really nice too. About 1725 for that Giga Gatling base damage. And then, of course, 1586 for that Hyper Missile, which also is pretty good. Heat and cool stats across the board are pretty solid too. Definitely with that Giga Gatling, I'm very interested to see how well it will perform, however, given that you have a very high heat and cooldown, but then of course it explains it works much like Mega Gatling. So if it will become the new meta scattered AoE skill, that is yet to be officially decided. Leg stats across the board are honestly kind of all over the place, though. With the mobility of 856, though, that is a pretty nice sweet spot for where you want that mobility to be, especially on the higher end. Evade of 1155 means he's going to be dodging or grazing relatively easily as long as the attacks as long as he can dodge or graze and not be limited by that. His melee and his shoot resist honestly aren't all that great, though, and do leave a little bit to be desired, since it means that when he is tanking hits, it is going to be a little more painful than expected. However, with the leg ability of Trigger Happy, as long as he can keep scoring crits, he can honestly capitalize on this pretty easily and compensate that weakness relatively quickly and relatively easily. As a pure set score, I would have to rate Black Kid about an 8 out of 10 roughly across the board. Like I said, pretty well balanced for what he offers as a conventional shooter. Probably could even qualify as a dedicated shooter or even a shoot nuker in this case, depending on how you choose to use him. As mixed parts, I would have to rate him pretty equally as well at an 8 out of 10 for these same reasons, given the fact that his arms are pretty well balanced and conventional in the sense that you have high base power, very solid specs across the board that you can really never go wrong with. And then of course his legs do also offer some very solid stats, especially geared towards shooter types in this case if you do choose to make use of them.